sits lower. I'm in Joel's seat. Whose seat am I in?
It is weird when you're not in your usual.
lower than others.
Good evening and welcome to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. It is the evening of October 15th, 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to invite you to stand and join us tonight in an invocation led by Pastor Randy Boomer from the Oak Harbor Christian Reformed Church, and we'll follow that with my leading the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Randy?
Let's all pray. Father in heaven, we come this evening thanking you for our city. We love our city of Oak Harbor. We are blessed by the gifts of all the people who work together to provide for our needs. We think of food and water and shelter and clothing and education and beauty and peace and safety and health. So many different areas that people in our city bless us with. Lord, these are gifts from you. Tonight as we gather to make decisions for our city, Lord, may our hearts be open to your wisdom. Shepherd us with your guidance. Give us humble hearts to work together. The agenda that we have before us this evening, Lord, may it align with your will. We ask these things in your name, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Randy. Please join me in the pledge. Okay, we have some council members unable to be with us tonight for various reasons. Mayor Pro Tem Munns is out recovering from medical complications, and she's not missing this meeting by choice, and I don't think any of them are actually. Councilor Joel Servadius and Councilor Jim Wiesner are not with us tonight, and I would accept a motion to excuse all three of them.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second to excuse Mayor Pro Tem Munns, Councilor Servadius, Councilor Wiesner. Motion made by Councilor Almberg, seconded by Councilor Wassinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So we have, let me see, I guess I'll have some announcements in a little while. In the meantime, we will move on to our approval of the agenda. Anybody want to change anything up on that? Okay, seeing no changes, we'll move forward with the agenda as presented, and we'll go immediately to Section 2C, and tonight we have a community presentation, Whidbey Homeless Coalition Annual Report, and it looks like Executive Director Jonathan Klein. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jonathan Klein, the Executive Director of the Whidbey Homeless Coalition. We have our main office down in Langley, but we also offer the shelter up here, the Haven in Oak Harbor, as well as the House of Hope down in Langley. All of our programming is centered around one mission, which is making homelessness a brief and rare experience in our community, and that's kind of what we try to use to guide all of our programming. We have typically looked at doing this with the three-prong approach, with the Haven up here, which is our night-to-night emergency shelter, the House of Hope, which is a 90-day temporary shelter, and then a transitional housing model. This year we've been looking at our programming, and we've decided to do away with the transitional housing model, both because of the costs that we were incurring with that, but also because of overlap in other organizations on the island offering that service. We looked at the resources we had and focused it in the Haven and the House of Hope, as those are two areas that there aren't other organizations focusing on. The program that you're probably most familiar with that we operate is the Haven, which is a pop-up shelter that operates here in Oak Harbor night to night. As a pop-up shelter, that means that we don't own our own building. We partner with various churches. Currently, we're at the Christian Reformed Church. We've been at the First Reformed Church and at the United Methodist across the street. We typically stay in these areas for about 3 months, and then we'll move on to a new area, although we are in the process of looking at feasibility studies as to opening up a permanent shelter for us so that we could have that long-term home to be able to provide access to showers, laundry facility services, and other things that we would have, and not having to move every 3 months. Since we've opened our doors in 2017, we've served over 400 people. We've served 137 so far this year. Of those 137 people, 36 of them have moved into housing that we're aware of. That number is likely quite a bit higher than that, as a lot of times we don't see people when they don't come back into the Haven to tell us that they've found housing. They don't have that reporting for us, but we have 36 people that we know this year in 2019 we have moved from the Haven into permanent housing. We run this program with a staff of 6 people. We have 3 full-time staff and 3 part-time staff, and with the strength of about 68 different volunteers that chip in from the Oak Harbor community. The staff are on call throughout the evening. They work in shifts to make sure that we always have a trained personnel on staff all throughout the night that's awake and alert. In case there's ever an issue that comes up, they can deal with that. Our great volunteer group covers everything from helping with registration to the Oak Harbor Lions Club, volunteering to drive people to and from the shelter every night. Various church groups stepping in to provide food, foot care, hair care, things like that. So we're very thankful to the groups that we've been working with that volunteer at the Haven on a regular basis. And we really do serve a wide variety of people there. I think about one of the first ladies I met when I took this position back in February was a woman in her mid to late 60s who had some failing health. She'd been homeless for well over a decade, what we would call definitely chronically homeless. Through working at the Haven, working with Haven staff since 2017 when we opened, we were able to kind of build that trust. And this year, as her health kind of started declining quicker and quicker, we were able to partner with some caseworkers at the county. And through that trust that we built, we were able to get her to admit that she'd like some help and to move into an assisted living center where she's now been for the past 3 months. Her health has improved drastically, as you can imagine, and having that stable place to be. And that's a story of kind of the chronically homeless amongst us, but that's not everyone that comes through the Haven. Another one that we had earlier this year was a couple that moved up here with their children to take care of ailing parents. When they got here, they didn't read the parents' lease very well, and they found out pretty quickly that the landlord would not allow them to move in with mom and dad. So that they didn't compromise their mother and father's housing situation, they then came into the Haven. Within 4 days of networking with partner organizations and within the community of Oak Harbor, we were able to get them leased and into a house. So we really have people that have been using services here anywhere from since we opened our doors in 2017 to people that come in, they're there one night, and then they're back on their way. For some people, that means that they transition to our 90-day temporary housing program, which is down in Langley. And that's the House of Hope, which provides an area for people to have a steady place where they can keep their belongings and know they have that same place to come back to every night for up to a 3-month span. We do referrals from the Haven that go down there, as well as referrals directly from the county, where sometimes they'll deem that a situation bypasses the Haven and comes directly there. With that program, we have taken in 36 people so far this year. Of that 36, 24 have been housed already. We have 6 that are currently at the house, and then we have 4 people that have been asked to leave for kind of failure to keep up with the program, as there's requirements that they meet on a weekly basis with meeting work requirements, requirements to be turning in enough applications for housing, as well as maintaining a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle in the facility. We do serve people from all over the island, like I mentioned, at that facility. We had a family earlier this summer. He was a vet from up here in Oak Harbor who lost his job and that snowballed on them, and they ended up losing their housing situation. they were able to come down with their family of 8 down into the House of Hope, and it was probably one of the bigger families that we've had in our rooms down there. But we made it work, and within 2 months, we were able to work with the husband. He was able to find employment back up here in Oak Harbor, and they were able to then get a voucher to come back up here and to be able to settle back into their community here in Oak Harbor before it worked out perfectly, like 3 days before the school year started, so all the kids were back up here and ready to go on the first day of school. Some of the other trends that we've been seeing, both areas that we've been trying to do a lot of thinking around, is with the increase in older women that are of retirement age, that thought they had enough finances saved for retirement, but with rising cost of living and whatnot, they're just not quite able to make it. So we've been doing over the summer, we had a house full of older retired aged women, and we're working with them both to try to connect them with situations where they could move into housing, where they didn't have to cover that full burden themselves, as well as working with people in some situations where maybe staying here on Whidbey isn't a realistic situation for them, and working with where they might have family in other parts of either the state or the country, and trying to work with people to make sure that they can get there, mostly with our focus just being on housing people. If we can house them here in the community, great. If they have to go and be with some family in another area and they're still housed, that's still a huge win as far as we're concerned in getting them back housing. The other area is with the support that we received from Oak Harbor. As I mentioned earlier, we receive financial support both from the county, from the city of Oak Harbor, and then from private individuals. With the support that we received from the city of Oak Harbor this year, we've been able to move a lot of people into housing. We've been able to take several of these people that are in this picture, came from the Haven, went down into the House of Hope, and then we're able to transition back up here. We're very thankful for the support both from the city as well as from the Oak Harbor Police Department. We've had a great relationship with them being willing to come anytime that there's an issue right away. And help us to deal with those, as well as being at our registration events and being there when guests are settling in for the evening, just to kind of make sure our guests feel safe, that the staff feels safe, that volunteers feel safe. And we're very thankful for that partnership. Lastly, I'd say that this Saturday we're having an event down at the Bayview Hall. We're going to have some live music, some good food, drinks available, some auction items, and we invite folks to come down through. All the proceeds from this event on Saturday are going to be used to help fund the Haven and the House of Hope programming for this year. So thank you guys. If there's any questions, I can try my best to address them.
Any questions? Yes, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. I had no idea that you guys followed up with the folks that stayed at the Haven and tried to, move them onto a more permanent solution. I thought it was, more like a Band-Aid kind of situation, which is great. We need that. But I had no idea that you did all that follow-up. So I'm really pleased to learn that, and good work.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of it is trying to partner with other organizations that are kind of pulling in the same direction as well, and saying, we've all got our own little piece of this, but any one piece of that in and of itself isn't going to be enough.
Right.
We need all of that. So it's been a lot of really good partnerships with other organizations up here.
That's great.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you. And if I'm not mistaken, everyone who stays at the Haven fills out a registration form, and that is reviewed by the staff to see if there are places that they can be referred to for their specific needs.
Correct. And we do also partner with the county, as well as being able to refer people down to the Coopville offices. We have members from the county that come up on a weekly basis now that are able to meet with folks that maybe that transportation is a difficulty, or they work during the day and they aren't able to stop in at that office. So yeah, as well as referring people on, we're able to bring in folks into the registration and into the shelter to try to link them up with some of those services.
Thank you.
That's great.
Anyone else? So if we had a question about the Haven and wanted to contact would we call you?
Yeah, you could call me, I'll leave, I left a bunch of these sheets on the back here, as well as I think I passed them all out.
Okay.
They'll have a number, and anytime there's anything that you need, feel
Okay.
free to contact.
Well, thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you to the Whitby Homeless Coalition. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to citizen comment period. And if you would like to comment about items that are not on tonight's agenda or on the consent agenda, to ensure comments are properly recorded, would you please state your name clearly into the microphone and limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all citizens have sufficient time to speak. And I see Mary Williford in the audience and has signed up. Okay. Mary?
Mary Williford. Do you need my address? Okay.
No.
I'm here in the city.
I know where to find you.
Okay. Oh, maybe that's not so good. And he does too, so okay. So I'm here. I've been a volunteer with the Haven even before they opened the doors. And I just wanted to thank the mayor and the city council for your support of the Haven now and hopefully in the future. I'd also like kudos to our captain here in stepping up efforts in our town to make it safer for everybody. Your presence is welcomed. If you've ever been homeless, and I'm not going to tell you any stories, okay, or you help with the homeless, you know how important it is to be treated with respect and dignity in a safe and friendly place. And for those serious to change a way forward, and that's what we provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So anyone else for citizen comment? You don't have to sign in, actually. Okay. Seeing none, then we will move on to our consent agenda. Looks like we have items number A through F. And if you prefer, we can pull one off to talk about. Otherwise, they'll be approved as presented. And it looks like they're going to be approved as presented. Good. Consent agenda is behind us. Mayor's comments. I do have a couple of things. I'll try to make them brief. Friends of the Library Week, October 20 to the 26th. Throughout the library district, we honor and celebrate our Friends of the Library groups for their tireless hard work and generous spirit. Friends of the Library are nonprofit volunteer organizations bringing together involved, caring people who support and promote the services and programs of their community library. Through their fundraising efforts, friends groups undertake projects and supply items which fall outside the established budget of their local library. So thanks, and Friends of the Library Week, the 20th through the 26th. And so we got an email at City Hall this last week, and I wanted to read it to you. Well, it looks like it was, contact form was submitted on the City of Oak Harbor website. Subject was utilities. From one of our citizens' comments, I just wanted to say thank you to your utilities department today. I just returned from deployment and forgot to have my water turned back on. Called, and within an hour I had water back on to get a fresh shower after a long 2 days of travel. Definitely a pleasant experience today. So our hats are off to our utilities division and our water division. It's really nice to get these kind of comments, so thank you, and to all staff in the city for that matter, for the customer service and looking for ways to help. So thank you. Also wanted to announce a question for the council to consider. I don't know that we'll look for any decisions tonight, but the National League of Cities 2020 Congressional City Conference in Washington, D.C. will be taking place on March 8th through the 11th of 2020. Registration will open Friday, November 22nd. Because everyone registers early, hotel and registration disappear quickly. So Dina Emery would like to know who will be attending prior to November 22nd, so she can reserve hotel and registration as soon as it opens. So if you can, if you're interested in going to the city conference, let us know, and we'll try to help get that set up. The sooner the better. And finally, I will end my comments by wishing Councillor Heisen a very happy birthday. And I noticed that you had ribbons and things, so.
Very festive.
And I knew it was your birthday because on Facebook I saw it was your birthday.
Facebook rats me out every year.
Happy birthday. I'm not going to say how many years, but it'd be nice to be in your 20s. Wow. Anyway, that's it for me. Council comments. Yes, Councillor Eisen, birthday girl.
And I just want to let everyone know that there is a coat drive this weekend. They are taking new and gently worn coats and jackets, and you can drop them off in the back parking lot of Walmart on Sunday between, I think it's 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. If you can't get there, then you can also drop them off at the Big Brothers Big Sisters office on Whidbey Avenue. Anytime during business hours, they will accept them then as well. And that is all.
Okay. Any other council comments? Okay. Then we will move to the city administrator comment.
Yes, I wanted to call your attention to your upcoming important city council dates. Some of the ones that are a little bit out of the ordinary is Wednesday, October 30th at 2:30 p.m. Our state auditor will do an exit conference, so council members, if you can make that time, you're invited to attend. We'll notice that as a special quorum. And because of the election in November, our regular council meeting will be on Wednesday, November 6th. And then the last thing on scheduling is we're trying to plan for a council retreat in February 2020 as part of the budget process, and a survey was sent out. And so we have one person that logged in a survey so far, so we're trying to pick a date there, so please fill that out. Moving on to my next item, as part of our education materials, the city staff generated a November 5th, 2019 Measure Voter Fact Sheet number 2. And the 2 is relevant because it is 2 pages this time. So that was one of the suggestions from previous council to be 2 pages. So it's going into the utility bills, and I'm giving you an advance notice to that. So that concludes my comments.
Okay. We will then move on to, we'll start in with our ordinances and resolutions. Just for your information, if you would like to speak during a scheduled public hearing or meeting, please, you don't have to sign in even. I'll try to remember to make sure and ask. You'll have an opportunity to speak to any one of the following next four items. And if you do, please state your name clearly in the microphone and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will go to item number 7A at this time, Resolution 19-35, Department of Ecology General Nutrient Standards in the Puget Sound. And we have our project engineer, Brett Arvidsson, here.
Good evening. This is an extension that we discussed at the workshop back in, I guess, September now. This is Resolution 19-35, Response to Nutrient Standards in the Puget Sound. To give some background, we put our clean water facility back in Operation November. In December, we did receive notice from the Department of Ecology about placing limits on nutrient loads in the Puget Sound. The Puget Sound has been identified as not meeting dissolved oxygen standards, and so they're beginning a path to bring that into correction. There also has been an environmental lawsuit filed by an environmental group to impose these nutrient standards, which is going on concurrently. Last August, Department of Ecology initiated rulemaking for the nutrient standards, so we're actively in the process now. To talk a little bit about our plant, the main nutrient we're talking about is nitrogen, and our plant sees about 35 to 40 milligrams per liter per day of nitrogen. We put out about 3 to 5, so we're doing them in the general range of 90% removal, which is excellent for our technology. So the yellow line there, 8 milligrams per liter, is proposed standard, which is actually pretty stringent. I suspect it's even going to be higher than that. Since we've talked last, I talked to DOE, and we're one of the 4 treatment plants currently meeting the proposed nutrient standard in the state, in the Puget Sound. So we're in a very unique position, and we should be proactive in ensuring that additional limits are not imposed on us. We're already meeting them. This is talking about the rulemaking process. DOE does go through a legal process to impose these standards, which involves public participation and testimony. And of course, as a permit holder and general public, we have the opportunity to comment on that. The first step in this process is a 2-step process, involves selecting the type of permit to use. They can use a facility-specific MPDS permit like we have down at the treatment plant currently, or they can use a general permit process. DOE has stated a preference for the general permit because it limits individual negotiations, and it can be implemented in a shorter time frame. As I said, we're right now just in the process of determining what type of permit to use, and nothing about what's actually the content contained in the permit. So we're just starting this process. So the comments have to be limited to the type of permit. Future process will involve actual language and requirements associated with nutrient standards, and that, of course, be open for public comment for a long time. And these comments are due October 21st. Now, the general permit itself imposes a uniform standard on all facilities, sort of like a blanket. A normal MPDS permit is facility specific and matches the treatment technology to the ambient water quality standards. So when we get permitted at our facility, we actually go through quite a bit of analysis for that. A general permit is convenient because it is, from a regulatory perspective, because it centralizes the participant comments. It's more quicker to implement. You may spend a little more time in the process, but you don't have to go and negotiate with all 50 permit holders. And it's more uniform in its application. And we're no stranger to general permits. Our stormwater permit and our biosolids operated under a general permit. One important part is a general permit can include facility-specific requirements. That's important. In our situation, a blanket permit would not work. Our concerns about general permit, any nutrient permit must recognize Oak Harbor's investment in and not imposing additional standards. Like I showed earlier, we are meeting the standard today. The things they're trying to do in the Puget Sound is happening since last November here. Nutrient issues are not only facility specific, but they're also impacted by local conditions. The water quality at the West Beach versus Saratoga, 2 completely different water bodies. So there's a lot that goes into that. Unfortunately, we discharged to the more adverse one. A general permit will reflect many interests, including the environmental litigants. So the environmental litigants will be quite active in terms of trying to get their ideas imposed. So it is a balancing act between everybody involved, but we're not the only participants in it. The bureaucratic process, as you go through this, tends to streamline the input and create a one-size-fits-all scheme. And like I say, we're one of out of 50, there's only 4 of us in our specific position, so we need to be very careful about getting pulled into that. While I don't think a facility-specific permit is going to happen, I think the actual general permit must address individual permit holder situations. I think we should push for individual permit, but if we don't get that, we need to also push for the general permit addressing our needs. Why comment on it? No good deed goes unpunished. We've done a good job, but when it gets to the negotiation stage, we may get lost in the wash. We got to be proactive in the process to avoid future costs and growth limitations. Some of the early talk about this general permit is doing a facilities plan, so they're talking everybody doing $200,000 worth of study just right out of the chute. We should be careful because, like I say, we're playing not only with environmental litigants, but people like King County, Pierce County, a lot of the big cities are involved in this process. And actually, conversations getting a lot louder in the last week. We may want to have standing in the event the permit is appealed by one of the parties, or if we wish to appeal. So getting our comments in helps us do that. And it's also a specialized esoteric process, and sometimes the squeaky wheel often gets the grease. So sometimes if you have a good argument, they'll figure out a way to get you through the system. I've done this in the past, and it's kind of hard to explain, but being active in this doesn't hurt. So we have a resolution in front of you, 19-35. It kind of goes through some of the history and the whereas part. Our main comments are that we are providing a high level of nutrient control and substantial water quality improvements to the East Whidbey Island receiving waters today. We feel a general permit is too generic a process for the complexity of these nutrient issues in Puget Sound, both from a facility basis and from a water receiving water basis. We would prefer a facility-specific process, but if DOE elects to pursue a general permit for nutrient control, then we request that they address each individual treatment plant equitably, and people get proper credit for what they've done or not done. Anyway, so our recommendation, the City Council adopt Resolution 19-35 regarding nutrient standards for the Puget Sound. Questions?
Okay, before the council considers it, I'll see if anybody from the public would like to comment or have any questions. Okay, seeing none. Back, yes, Councilor Omberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Brett, I want to thank you for taking the lead on going after DOE on this thing, and I don't mean going after them in a negative way, but to sell our case, because I think we're one of only 4 communities who discharge into Puget Sound that meet nutrient levels that are higher than what they may set on a one-plan-fits-all permit. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And then if the Navy, and we're in the process of negotiating with the Navy benefits out of this also,
Yes.
if they are successful in joining us. Who do we have to help us at the state level and the federal level to help sell this story? Are we contacting anybody in particular?
We aren't really doing any lobbying per se. I've been in contact with we have a good relationship with DOE because of the treatment plant and the monies we've received for them. And I want to say it's been a strong partnership, and we did make the effort to call them and talk to them about our concerns. And they actually welcomed our participation. I think they were kind of a voice of reason sometimes. So again, I think we should be working as, through whatever, this Association of Washington Cities, those type of things, and, our politicians. But it is a very specific rulemaking process, an administrative DOE process. So legislatively, you're not going to change that very much. And it's also driven by the Clean Water Act. And so I think we're in a strong position to keep ourselves doing well, but like I said, we have to participate.
It's my understanding that communities that exceed the nutrient discharge levels, the permitted ones, will be required to update their facilities and
Yes.
or no sewer hookups.
The sewer hookups is further down the road. Their first steps is to plan. They're going to put a nutrient cap on you, so you can't discharge any more nutrients than you do now, as we call the capping process. And what that is still kind of speculation. The second thing is to begin the process of planning and financing and build these facilities. Eventually, if people don't do it, then the cap basically says you can't discharge anymore. So if you're up at the cap, you're going to have to start planning those facilities faster.
Plan it faster or limit
Yeah.
the hookups.
Yeah.
Which has happened to communities in the past.
It happens a
too.
lot.
And it could have happened to us if we didn't go forward with
Yeah, we were very close
replacing
to
the
it. We were very
plan.
close in
Our
2015.
permitted
yeah.
expired on that existing one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Other council questions or input or motions? Yes, Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 1935 regarding nutrient standards in the Puget Sound as presented.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 1935 as presented. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We will then now move on to item number 7B, Resolution 1937, expressing opposition to Initiative 976, limits on motor vehicles and fees measure. And we have our city administrator, Mr.
Yeah.
Oborn.
Waiting for my slide to go up. All right, at the last council meeting, there was some consideration to bring this forward for you to have the option to take a position on Initiative 976. I-976, let's see if I can get that right, is coming on the 2019 ballot measure. One of the major things it does is discontinue the city's ability to impose transportation benefit district car tab, the $20 car tab. So we've been going in the route of a 0.2% sales tax as opposed to that option. But if this initiative passed, it would take away that revenue source. Here's some other major cities that have already passed opposition to it by their council. AWC provides information in your packet of the effect of this initiative and guidance on how elected officials can respond. And then probably one of the serious impacts is to Island Transit right here in this county. And there's some information in your packet how it would severely impact a lot of their revenue stream there. So what to do from here? According to the law on this initiative, you have to allow those opposed to this to express their opinion at this meeting, and then with providing that public comment period, then I would recommend a motion to move to approve Resolution 1937, a resolution of the City of Oak Harbor opposing Initiative 976, an initiative seeking to repeal authority to impose certain vehicle taxes, changes vehicle validation laws, and limits motor vehicle license fees to $30. Any questions?
So we'll open that up for public comment then at this time. See if anybody here has any input or any, okay, seeing none. We'll bring it back to council. Anybody want to speak to it, or? Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. We did in fact discuss this at our recent workshop, and I appreciate the papers that you referred to, Mr. Oborn, because there will be a pretty significant negative impact to Island County Transit and our ability to exercise options for road repair funding as we move forward. So I am going to support this resolution expressing our opposition to this initiative.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I think, it's really easy to just have a knee-jerk reaction when you see something that's going to lower the price of anything. But as always, there are consequences. Nothing's free. So at the end of the day, we get the level of service we're willing to pay for, basically. So we have a hard enough time without cutting these revenue sources. So I absolutely support the fact that the city is presenting a unified voice on this issue. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Humber.
I have mixed emotions about this, and I'm still on the fence. So I think it's premature to say it is unified. And the reason is, when I served on the transit board, we went through 4 years of recovery, and it was a lot of hard work. And the former transit executive director, the former captain of the base, Mike Nortier, did quite a bit of calculus on how Island Transit could further recover. And believe me, that board that I served on did a lot of work to have it recover. But in the end, we had an opportunity to charge on the transit fares of $1 and graduated discounts for people in special need. And the calculus by this time would have netted about $200,000 a year. So I think you can understand why I'd be some resistance to just saying, well, I feel sorry for Island Transit because I really believe in transit, especially seamless public transit. But it was a small group of people who really lobbied hard to kill that, and so the majority of the board decided to keep it free. So, for me, what am I going to do? You could probably reduce Saturday service, which is probably going to happen if this doesn't pass, or some other services within its, what it's going to jeopardize part of the quality of the service that we have. And at the same time, I think that it would be appropriate for the transit board to reconsider implementing those fees to help themselves. That was the study. Everybody was unified on, let's help ourselves on this. And I also understand and have experienced that the valuations of motor vehicles for the purpose of increasing the revenues for license has been artificially kept higher than what the real market value of the vehicles are. And part of that is statistical information that I have found and also my personal experience. So I think there's some house cleaning that has to go on both sides of this story too. So when I will probably say yes, my hand will be halfway up, okay? But I think the general public should understand that too and be involved in keeping our transit going and the service going, but there's also a cost for doing that too. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wassinger.
I move to adopt or approve, Resolution 1937 expressing opposition to Initiative 976, limits on motor vehicles in fee measure.
Second.
So where did you read that?
Oh, sorry.
Was that?
I always do that. I feel like every time I
Well, I just want to be.
I will move to recommend the motion as presented on the screen. I was
Okay.
reading it off of my own paper.
So we have a motion. Do we have
And a second.
to that? Okay. So we have a motion and a second that is exactly like the motion recommended on the screen. Motion made by Councillor Wassinger, second by Councillor Heisen. Any more? Yes, Councillor Heisen.
If I may respond to Councilmember Almberg's comments, which are valid, but I also want to point out that if this initiative passes and our TBD sales tax increase does not pass, that limits our ability to go the car tab route. So this affects a lot more than just Island Transit. If that might push your hand up a little further, just throwing that out there.
Okay, anyone else?
I agree with Tara too.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Half a vote.
You can't do half. You can't do half. That's a full vote.
3.5.
So we have any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously tonight. Or 4 here. Okay.
Putting this in my calendar, Almberg says, I agree with Tara.
We are moving on to the last item in section 7, which is ordinances and resolutions. This is Resolution 19-38, 2020 Lodging Tax Advisory Committee awards for the 2% grant applications. We have our Finance Director, Patricia Soul, with us.
Thank you very much.
Patricia?
So tonight I'm bringing forward the recommendations from the LTAC committee. We this year did a two-part process. We have a multi-year award recommendation as well as an annual award. The multi-award recommendation is for $169,000, and the annual reward is for $165,000. If you look at page 79 and 80, it lists out the individual organizations that we are recommending be awarded the funding. The first grouping is for the multi-year, and the second grouping is for the annual grants. If you go to page 81, we show what was requested and what was actually awarded. And we would like for council to approve the recommended action awarding the, adopting Resolution 1938 approving lodging tax advisory recommended awards for the 2% grant applications. And then Part B, authorizing the finance director to execute contracts in excess of $30,000.
So before we do that here at the council, see if anybody wants to speak to this or has any questions or input from the audience. Okay, seeing none, we will bring it back to council. I think we have a couple of recipients in our audience. But, any questions or input, or Councillor Heisen?
I have a question, and I'm not sure if anybody can answer this, but I'm just curious as to why Main Street pulled their request from the list. Can you answer that?
That was done by Margaret Livermore during the committee meeting, and she said it was due to how cold it was, and they just felt like they didn't want to do it.
Because it was specifically for Oktoberfest?
Yes,
Okay.
specifically, she pulled it at the meeting.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Holmberg?
I'd like to make a motion on item A, adopt resolution 19-38 approving the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee LTAC recommended award for the 2% grant applications.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action A. A motion by Councillor Holmberg and second by Councillor Wassinger. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So we have one item left, B. Yes, Councillor Wassinger.
I move to authorize the finance director to execute the contracts that exceed $30,000.
B, second.
Got a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action under section B. Motion by Councillor Wassinger, second by Councillor Holmberg. Any other questions, input? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. So, we are on our last item. Contracts and agreements. Professional Service Agreement, Pacific Groundwater Group, Inc., City Well Number 9, and you have about 10 minutes.
I'll try to get fast. This is for our PSA for Pacific Groundwater Group. This is for replacement of our well number 9. To give you a little background on this, Oak Harbor has several wells to augment our main water supply and provide backup in the event of an emergency or failure. We do use these wells if we have a really low flow year to augment our supply. Like last summer, we went into stage 1, but we didn't have to use them very much. Well, number 9 was constructed in the 1960s and has since pretty much failed. We still get a little production out of it, a couple of gallons a minute, but it's pretty much gone its way. We've tried to rehabilitate it, and it's still not working. What we think is happening is the well screen is fouled. That's a pretty common occurrence of wells around here, especially wells that era. So the only way to regain the production is to drill a new well in the vicinity. Right now we're talking about moving 50 to 100 feet away and doing that. The project has been on our capital project list for several years, but we just didn't have the people to execute it, so we're going to pick it up this year. And we have selected Pacific Groundwater Group to assist with the well design process. And this is well 9. It's up on Heller Road, up there by Whidbey Avenue. It's kind of, looks like a little playground back there. There's a little shed in the back, but it's actually our well protection area. if you remember a few months back, we had some discussions about the Wagon Wheel mobile home park. That's just a couple miles up the road. So the well failures there were close to this. Anyway, Pacific Groundwater Group, why we want to use them. North Whidbey Island is a single source aquifer, and there's significant hydrogeological variation. You would think it'd be uniform, but throughout the north part of the island, it's all over the place. We actually ran into it down during the clean water facility when we were doing the micropiles, and it was pretty variable, even that small area. So it can be interesting place. An improperly drilled or designed well could result in a dry hole, so it's a risk that we don't want to drill a hole and spend some major money, then not work. So we definitely want to bring some people on and know what they're doing. With the history of the screen fouling, a proper suction of the well screen is crucial. What they did back in the 60s versus what they do now for well screens is a whole new science, and selection of the proper screen ensures a longer life, and you don't have problems with the aquifer when you do that. So it's something we want to do. A big part of this job is proper observation during the actual drilling process. You want somebody out there monitoring as it goes down. The Wagon Wheel, from what I hear, is they're using rotary drilling methods and just blew through the aquifer, and they drilled 2 holes, and they finally were able to recover them, but they got lucky. So if somebody knows what they're doing during that process, it's a one-shot deal, so we want to make sure we got some good people. Relooking the well, even a small distance, is a fair amount of regulatory involvement, so we want somebody to help us with that. We selected PGG because they're experienced in well design. They do wells all over the state. And they actually know the geohydrology of Whidbey Island pretty well. Their scope of service is the evaluation of the site and the aquifer to best locate the well. Like I say, we want to do it close, but we want to make sure we get it right. Transfer of the water rights. We do have a well water right, and even though we're moving a short distance, we have to go through a fair amount of paperwork to do that. We, of course, designed the new well and the screen system. We have to obtain county and state regulatory approvals, both for our well protection area from the county and from the state health department. So there's a fair amount of work there. We also have to design and construct the new wells so it attaches to our infrastructure. That well was built in the 60s. We've done some modifications, but may have to fix some of the plumbing and electrical for that, for the new equipment. Prepare construction documents for the project, assist in bidding, and of course monitor the drilling process. We do test the wells when we get done, so we do make sure they produce what we want to produce, and we're hoping to increase the production to our full regulatory allowance. We never did that with the old well. And finally, we have final regulatory documentation for the project. There's a fair amount of paperwork required to be on file when we get finished with the well. Anyway, our contract cost vendor post cost is $55,228. $55,228. This is just for the professional services. The actual cost of the well, we're estimating about $250,000 right now. So there's more to come on this one. Schedule-wise, we'll probably design the well system next couple months, spend 4 to 6 months getting it approved, the various regulatory approvals, go through a bidding process or some other procurement. And the actual construction only takes about a month, won't take very long. Anyway, our recommended action is that the City Council authorize the mayor to sign a professional services contract with Pacific Groundwater Group Incorporated in the amount of $55,228 for replacement of City Well Number 9. Questions?
Okay, before we take it up here, we'll see if anybody from the public wants to ask questions. Okay, seeing none, we will bring it up to council. Questions? Councilor Wassinger.
I know Patricia's not here, but you said this has been on our capital
This is on our capital.
project list,
It's budgeted.
but it has been budgeted. And is this can you remind me what fund appropriation this is? Fund 425, is that?
Water fund.
Water fund? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, I couldn't remember off the top of my head. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I still do clean water facilities, so.
Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Brett, just out of curiosity, what is the anticipated gallons per minute that we might see?
We're
from a
looking
new
to
well?
get the full permitted value, which is about 220 gallons per minute. Right now, best we ever got out of that well was about 100, 120 for a very short period of time. So, like I say, the screen design is real critical to that, and if we can get it placed in the right spot.
And follow-up question to that, how is the second backup well performing at this time?
Last I heard, it was working pretty good. You know, we've used it fairly extensively, and we have another one down the road that if we can get this one to work, we may want to do that one in the future. But it's been running pretty consistently, but it's only like 120, 150 gallons per minute. It's not great.
Thank you.
Councilor Holmberg.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I will make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the professional service agreement with Pacific Groundwater Group, Inc. for services related to the constructing City Well Number 9 in the amount of $55,228.
Second.
Got a motion in 2 seconds. The motion reads just like the recommended action in your packet. The motion is Councilor Almberg. I'm going to give the second to Councilor Larson. Any other questions or input? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Any other council business?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I want you to know we got it done before.
I was going to say,
Before
you got done in
7
8
o'clock.
minutes.